tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. And the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have. They don't get charged on foreign companies, they get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you're trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press.
I mean, she's awash in regret and remorse and offense, but she's either tragically uninformed or lying. There is no economist that's been tapped to sit in Donald Trump's cabinet who would testify under oath to what she just said. Quote, tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. Simply the opposite is reality. Why do you think they're on such a furious propaganda mission around the tariffs?
I think that Donald Trump has a very, very unusual, idiosyncratic, and completely incorrect understanding of how tariffs work. You can look at economists everywhere from the Libertarian Cato Institute to the left of center think tanks in Republican and Democratic administrations, aside from the Trump administration, and they all agree that tariffs function as tax increases on consumers. What happens with a tariff is that companies importing pay the cost of the tariff, and they mostly pass those costs on to consumers. You can go look at corporate earnings calls, and they all say that tariffs function this way. So, you know, I think that this comes from Trump himself, who has for decades now held this unusual understanding of tariffs, but it doesn't make it real. It doesn't make it true. And we already have companies saying that they will have no choice but to pass some of the cost increases on. And again, these are not companies that are heavily politically aligned. Some of the companies that have been most concerned about the tariffs are heavy industrial companies concerned about the cost of steel, aluminum, and other manufacturing inputs. So as much as Trump believes this, it's simply not true. And American consumers are finding that out right now.
Claire, there are some lies that they tell, the woman from the podium and Trump and Vance and others, that we deal with our own exasperation and consternation. We call it Earth 1 and Earth 2. But there are other lies they tell that they can't get away with because their own supporters, lived reality, defy the lie. So the price of eggs is up. People's retirement savings, if they're near retirement age, have cratered. People who derive anxiety or hope from the way the markets go are awash in anxiety, not hope. And Trump, if you compare Trump to Trump, Trump is way off the mark from where he was the first time around. He has cratered his own economy. Why?
I think he's got, obviously, a misplaced sense of his power. And frankly, I think he really has a misplaced sense of whether or not people respect him. You know, there's two ways to create fear in politics. One way to create fear is to gain the respect of both your allies and your adversaries. And you do that by strong, consistent leadership. The other way to create fear is through instability and chaos. And that's the fear he's creating. And what he's electing more progressive leaders across the globe right now than, frankly, ever would have happened without him. He is politically pushing people away from conservatism because they see it as now a Trump thing. I'm in Germany right now, and I can tell you the people I've interacted with in the short time I've been here, they are scratching their head. They do not understand what has happened in America. And I think at home, his base, he won the part of our economy that struggles the most. The paycheck to paycheck people are suffering, and he is not helping them. He is hurting them. That does not, on all these fronts, he is not going to gain ground politically, and he may not realize it now, but he will eventually.
Claire, the piece about annexing Canada, a friend and a neighbor who has never done anything to offend any American or any American politician, who has only helped us in national security crises and as an economic partner, trading and otherwise, contrasted with the things he said about Vladimir Putin, and I'll quote him. Quote, he and I have been through a lot together, end quote. You can't separate the two, right? It's not just the animosity for our closest friends on the world stage from a national security perspective and an economic one, but it is also the fawning, pandering, and affinity and affection for our greatest adversaries. What at this mark, 51 days, do you think explains that?
I think he sees power as his ultimate objective. He is not a student of the Constitution. He doesn't understand the value of checks and balances in our system. And he thinks executive orders is the way to make him an autocrat, like Putin, like Xi, like all of these guys that he is sucking up to, who don't allow their people to have a voice. I mean, the idea that he's trying to deport someone who is legally in this country because he disagrees with him. I mean, think about that for a minute. And think about the whole thing of saying he's going to make Canada the 51st state. What, is he going to go to war with Canada? Does he think the American people are going to put up with us losing lives to try to take Canada? Because Canada is not going to do it ever willingly. So the only way you do it is by force. Is he going to do to Canada what Putin has done to Ukraine? I mean, that's the logical consequence of what he's saying. And it's batshit crazy. Sorry.
It's okay. It's 4:17. Someone had to say it. Amanda, I guess I'll give you the last word.
It's 9 o'clock in Munich, so I've got an excuse.
It's always 9 o'clock
at night.
It's always 9 o'clock somewhere. You can always say it here. If Bill Barr can say it, the seal has been broken. I mean, Amanda, I'll come back to you. Are Canadians prepared for that possibility? What Claire just articulated is the natural extension of demanding the annexation of another nation.
I will tell you that Canadians are pretty firmly opposed to any such plan. And I don't even want to give it enough credibility to say what Canadians would do, myself included, if it came to that. But let's just assume we don't have to, that there's all kinds of checks and balances standing between us and that worst outcome. In the meantime, a lot of damage can be done. And just as, you know, your tariffs are paid by your citizens and businesses, our counter tariffs are paid by ours. So the economic damage is real. It's already happening. And the uncertainty for business is already doing untold damage. We now have a risk of recession on both sides of the border that we didn't have 6 months ago. And so whatever the outcome on that front, the economic damage is very real. As for the rest of it, I'm just going to continue to hope that cooler heads prevail and we don't actually wind up in the kind of situation that is that worst case scenario.